What was the craziest reason a teacher at your school got fired? I went to HS in the early 80s in a tiny rural Appalachian town 35 miles from the closest traffic light. We had classes that taught auto mechanics, one that taught carpentry, had a motorcycle riding class and a rifle shooting class, and classes for welding and machine shop with lathes and milling machines etc. The teacher of the machine shop got arrested for making silencers for the mafia. And half the stuff he had us making as class projects on the lathes and milling machines was items he used in making them. A professor at my college was placed on administrative leave because he was charged with participating in the Rwandan genocide and was deported shortly after. He ended up being found not guilty, although I think he's still in a Rwandan prison for denying that the genocide happened. A history teacher I had in high school gave us a lot of random documentary movie days, during which she would just sit in the back at her desk drinking tea. The year after I graduated, she had a movie day, and when the film ended she didn't get up or do anything but sit there, eyes closed, fearing the worst. Some students went to the office and brought an administrator down who found she was passed out drunk. They found bottles in her desk. Sent a porn link instead of Google form by email. Many students then commented on the video with a lot of great jokes. Funny times. Yeah, I knew one that posted boobs to their course Canvas page and then claimed it wasn't him. There was an IT investigation after they were instantly suspended from teaching. It was him. And he got fired. Our AP calculus teacher in high school had a mental break. Ranted for an entire class period about some nonsense. Then drank an entire bottle of salsa. Stormed out and never came back. They had a substitute for the rest of the semester, which was unfortunate since the sub wasn't a calculus teacher, so they were at a disadvantage for the AP test. Our teacher was a chronic liar and lied about having a master's and a degree. Funny thing is she actually did have a relevant degree that would have got her the job. Other lies include dating Brad Pitt, being an ex-gang member, and even being a multimillionaire but just enjoying teaching. In high school, a friend and I did some research and discovered that the principal's degree was issued by a university that didn't exist. The address we were able to find of it was nothing but a mailbox. That principal is still working as far as I know. 25 years ago at my all-boys Catholic high school, a priest was accused of court molesting a student. Of course this wasn't a firing offense for a priest back then, it was just hushed up. The guy was creepy as hell. Earlier this year I read about him in the paper, a fresh round of allegations. He was allowed to keep on going for another 25 freaking years. Human trafficking and 9 counts of sexual misconduct with a minor. Edit. No, it was not me. Haha, you made a funny good job. And thanks dudes. This blew up more than I expected by a lot. My band teacher resigned and fled back to his home state but ended up getting arrested on federal charges. He was having sex with band students on trips, and some of them were across state borders. His house was searched and he had videos. He got 45 days in jail. His parents are affluent and was able to push the trial out several years before eventually pleading guilty. This was after a band assistant was fired for dating a 16-year-old trumpet player while 33. The principal resigned amongst all this. A student teacher who was coaching cheer gave a girl pain meds, narcotic, without a prescription or permission from parents. She got fired. Never heard if she managed to get a teaching license after that. I remember a day where I got my braces tightened and asking a friend for a Tylenol. I guess my science teacher overheard because he gave me one. But he made me promise not to tell anybody. Don't know what would have happened if I told someone my science teacher gave me a pill. Had a history teacher show a bunch of 7th graders drunk history. The goody two shoes of the class asked and told her mom, who complained to the school. He was fired by the end of the week. The school I work at is named after a local hero that Drunk History did an episode on, and I want to show my kids so bad because they'd get a kick out of it, but I love paychecks more than entertaining children, so I'll just have to remain dissatisfied. He was caught putting a camera under the girls' swimming changing room door. Year 6, grade 5. Edit. This was about 6 years ago. Don't know what happened to him after he was fired. He threw pencils at students. One day he threw a chair at a girl who annoyed him. Serious anger management issues. And then they found the child porn on his computer at school. Rumor was that he had also been grooming one of the student aides. I haven't heard a thing about him since the year he disappeared. My language arts teacher got caught taking the bus up to the mountain to smoke weed with the ski club. This was back before the sticky icky was legal here. Even if it were legal at the time, that's still weird. Imagine a teacher going to drink with underage kids. Alcohol is legal, but that's still a weird and inappropriate thing to do. Threw a chair across the classroom, hitting a student in the process. And X200B. I think she was going through a divorce or something, but it was talk of the town throughout the whole week. We never saw her again after that. Our high school art teacher got fired after someone found an old YouTube video of him painting with his ass cheeks. We held a protest to try to keep him around. But they fired him anyway. In high school, for pay, our teacher took us canoeing. Instead of checking the weather, he brought 15 freshmen into the channel our school was on. A severe thunderstorm hit. And our teacher paddled safely back to school and left us teens in the water. We tied our canoes together and rowed back to school. But we were drenched and super late. Our teacher was just standing on the dock. Not a care in the world. He got fired like 2 days later. Didn't get fired. But should have. 9th grade. Room of angsty teens gets a new English teacher. MRS. Redacted. This English teacher likes 3 things. Jesus. Pouring pills down her autistic son's throat. And Anne Rice. During class when talking about an assignment, a couple students talked about a student who attempted suicide and the teacher had enough. She got up and explained how to properly cut your wrists to a whole class. What an educational experience. Edit. Whoa. Thanks for the awards and upvotes. I rarely bring up this teacher, but this AskReddit seemed the appropriate time. Also, I removed the name. Not my school, but one in my general area had an entire lunch period's worth of students watch a male teacher scream at his wife, female teacher in the same school, after catching her with the janitor. In school. It was in a Catholic monastery school not even 10 years ago. My homeroom teacher prevented the suicide of a nun and got fired for it. That's literally all the info we pupils got at the time. Apparently you can't do anything right in this world. Taught world religion at a private Christian high school so well that kids started opening up their minds to other worldviews. I think the parents played a big role in him getting fired. That's sad. Open bracket. One of my professors at a religious college was too good at teaching his scripture class. He was one of the few who actually taught it from a scholarly perspective. They ended up banning him from teaching that class because of the controversy. Though they didn't fire him and they did let him teach other classes. A maths teacher got in a fist fight with the art teacher because the maths teacher stopped the guys who were doing art from leaving his maths class to take their state exam. The exam was the Junior Cert Art Practical. This was in Ireland. Edited for extra clarity and more background info. The union intervened and he got his job back. I talked about this a few days ago, but she told me she didn't want me doing any practical work because she knew I was retarded and it's not fair that I take all her attention away from the normal children. I was 14. Autistic. And it broke my f***ing heart. A really cool teacher of mine put on the 2016 Deadpool movie in class after some convincing from the class. Anyways. Some kid snitched, no idea who, and because the movie was rated R she was fired. She was really cool too and I felt pretty bad. Other than the SX scandal with underage students that happened, my best friend got a teacher fired on accident because she was buying and selling UGR cards with students. He just so happened to say how cool it was to another teacher, which led to, well, the not so happy ending. That's pretty fucking dumb for them to get fired for basically what kids were doing with each other. That's just called the secondary market for cards. If they sold them, traded them to a store, they'd get less. Good for that teacher for playing a card game and making friends. A teacher apparently got fired for doing drugs before class a couple years after I had her. I thought it was just rumors before the principal just avoided the question after being asked about it. My kindergarten teacher picked me up by the neck and tossed me across the room. She wasn't actually fired. Just not allowed to teach kindergarten again. Instead, she taught 2nd grade. She was my teacher that year. 2. In her defense, odds are pretty good that I had it coming. I had a teacher, really nice teacher, who had bad anger management issues. When he went angry he would literally flip tables. He would go berserk, scream and flip tables left and right. Eventually he kind of disappeared. When I asked my principal about him, he said that X is on leave. Never seen him again. He was really nice guy and good teacher. Too bad my classmates drove him insane. In my own words, one of my teachers was fired for doing sexual things during school hours. As in looking at girls' asses during track practice. And looking at porn during class. Broke a kid's arm because he wasn't able to answer a question or something. He was sued and fired. He left his laptop open in class while teaching and a student found child porn on it while trying to play a prank. Cops promptly found stashes of the stuff at his house when they investigated further. Was arrested and is now in prison as far as I know. He taught students aged 11-16. Organized a student choir. And was even the main teacher for some of the younger classes. This was well publicized in the local media at the time. Not just a vile nonce, but a f***ing dumb one at that. Not crazy, but I got a teacher fired by accident. I was in Spanish 2 and was almost failing. This was odd since I mainly had as B+S. My mom also found this odd since I went to tutoring after class and asked for other help. After talking to others in my class about my performance, I realized a lot of the class was doing poor. My mom called the principal and thought she was doing so anonymously, however she forgot to 67 and the principal knew exactly who he was talking to. Next thing I know, he visited our class unannounced and sat there the whole time not using his phone, iPad or laptop. He then came in a couple more times for 10+ minutes. Next school year she was no longer a teacher and was moved to iPad support in our school district. This is the kicker. I had no idea our principal was fluent in Spanish. He clearly realized our teacher had no idea what she was doing. A male coach was having sex with one of the female students. She was under 16. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. That is not all. A female teacher helped keep it a secret. The female teacher left the job. Spent a few days in jail but mostly went unscathed due to her cooperation in the investigation. She did lose her license. I bet a bunch of this will be made up or blatant lies. I've taught for 11 years and only one teacher was fired at the schools I worked at. Which were huge. He was fired for punching another teacher after school. Only adults witnessed this. Some teachers quit because of various reasons and they all had rumors spread about the reason they were fired. None were even remotely true since all of the teachers quit on their own merit. Actual true firings will likely be the teachers f***ing students that got arrested and shown on the news. Source: teacher. Not sure if crazy or dumb, but my teacher when I was in 3rd grade got fired for selling us Pokemon cards that she would confiscate from other classes during recess. She told us we could buy the cards. About $25. But we couldn't have them out during school hours. Not a teacher but the school resource officer. He got caught having sexual relations with a freshman. Officer was like 52. She was involved in a murder. No. She didn't kill anyone. She was one of the last people that was seen with the victim. She was the victim's best friend. News reporters kept on showing up to my school to try to get any words they could from my teacher. And as you can imagine, it became a huge distraction for the students. It was sad. The case became pretty famous in my home state. And a law was created in the victim's name. Freshman year of HS we kept having bomb scares. About once a month we would have to evacuate while the police brought the bomb dogs to check out the place. Turns out it was one of our long-term subs. She got arrested. But don't know the end result. Grade 6. Our male teacher was apparently wrestling after hours with a girl in our class and gifting her lottery tickets. One day our principal came in. Asked the teacher to come with him. They both got in the principal's car and we never saw that teacher again. On a Friday night, a gym teacher girls basketball coach purposefully threw a bong out of the passenger side window of his pickup truck. He was in the passenger seat. His wife was driving, causing it to smash on the hood of an on-duty sheriff in a marked Crown Victoria. Again. He meant it to smash on the hood of the cop car. He got out trying to assault the cop but was quickly tased. Never saw him again after that. He was a cool guy. Edit. This was at a stoplight. When I was in 6th grade, my civics teacher was fired for being a white supremacist. She also kept a gag on her desk and some other objects you usually wouldn't see on a teacher's desk. So in about 6th or 7th grade, normally you would do the normal school things. Learn? Well, our teacher didn't really want to do that, so when it was about time for lunch, I was in detention BTW. I got dismissed and I went to the classroom to see the teacher. F-king one of the students in our class. They got fired like a week later. And the person they F-ked just moved schools, I guess. In my middle school, there was a really pervy substitute who had a huge beard. One day, one of the students said, "MRD, it looks like you have a huge bush on your face." He said on a good night I do and winked. At a 13-year-old. Had a teacher slap a kid after he kept making fun of her weight. She had gotten several weight loss surgeries in the past and was gaining it back. The kid deserved though. Total asshole and bully. But also the teacher sucked at teaching and had a mental breakdown when she got fired and trashed her classroom on the way out. My favorite teacher in 4th grade fled to Mexico a couple of years after I left his class. The cops chased him the whole way on the freeway. But I'm not sure if they got him. I guess he had been molesting boys in his class. Boy did I dodge a bullet. See signs at Mac joke. He had a bag of female students' hair in his desk. I still don't know what to make of it. He was one of the best and most well-liked teachers and coaches. I spent a lot of time with him due to sports, as did a lot of my friends and classmates, and he was never inappropriate. Not once. I've never spoken to anyone who has anything but positive memories of him. She was a lesbian. In 2003 my high school psychology teacher was fired for not being straight. There was some group of parents that got all Karened up about it and made a stink. Unfortunately I can't remember exactly what happened afterward. I know there was a huge protest by the students to reinstate her, and I want to say they offered but she declined to come back. My 6th grade STEM teacher got fired within the first week of school for screaming insults and swear words at some kids who she thought were being annoying. This was in a Christian private school. Was found to be in possession of crack cocaine during a drug bust. In terms of crimes, I suppose that's not much. But there are 2 stoplights in my hometown. It was a big deal. When I fact-checked myself before typing, I found the teacher's LinkedIn profile. And they mentioned being head of their department until they moved from the area. 1. They were literally the only teacher of their subject matter at my high school. 2. They resigned because they got busted. Not moved out of state. I aspire to be half as confident with my LinkedIn. Okay, so she didn't get fired, which was sketchy, but she had 2 DUIs while she was a teacher. Had alcohol in her coffee cup every morning. Some kid knocked it over one day and she freaked the FCK out. She was always late. Yelled at the principal during class when he came to tell her to stop teaching and let us take our final. The list goes on and on, but I liked her. Pretty much everyone else hated her. I'm surprised she was never fired. 2 excellent teachers at my high school. Miss Someone and Mr. Something. Fell in love and moved in together and later got married. When they moved in together, the Catholic high school fired her for living in sin, but he got to keep his job. Bringing literal sex toys in her bag. I was the one that reported it. She was riding her dildo when I went in. I had forgot my hair clip, and I just stood there silently. She didn't notice me for a while, and then when she did, she tried to seduce me to not tell on her. And now she is on parole. One of my teachers got fired for sexual assault on a minor. And I actually learned about while reading the newspaper in her class. Needless to say, we had a long-term sub starting the next day. He had hidden his phone in the ceiling of the girls' locker room. He had decades of nudes. Still avoided jail time. There are rumors the faculty knew. The principal of our HS stepped down. I wasn't in any of his classes. But there was a teacher at my high school who just didn't show up one day. He was relatively young and healthy. So they didn't think he died or anything. But for a little while people were worried something had happened to him. Then it turned out he'd left his wife and children to run away with a 17-year-old girl who was one of his students. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him after that. But presumably he wasn't allowed to return to work. I once had a substitute teacher who accidentally made a kid cry. And then told them not to cry but tried to say it in a sweet voice. But failed, so the kid cried even harder. She wasn't our sub after that. The police knocked on the door of our French teacher's home. And he answered butt naked, holding a plastic trumpet. High on either crack or meth. And proclaiming to be Jesus. He somehow evaded them and started running through his neighborhood pretending to play the trumpet. Naked. And claiming to be Jesus. They finally tackled him and pepper sprayed him. At which point he proclaimed Jesus is blind. And was arrested. There was this amazing teacher that everybody loved. We loved the way he taught and interacted with everyone. One day, one of his classes got a little out of hand and he got frustrated. A girl came up to him to ask him something and he grabbed her ponytail and dragged her to her desk. He was gone for a month. He returned and he didn't get fired. I guess he got off pretty easy. We were all okay with it because he was a great teacher and he was extremely sorry. Edit. I forgot to mention that I wasn't in the period that this happened in. So I only heard stories that the entire grade passed around. Maybe the stories were a little exaggerated. We'll never know. One of my college teachers also owned a business and he basically only taught a few classes every week. A few years after I graduated, he got arrested for fraud. Apparently he embezzled €500,000, over $600,000. My kindergarten teacher spanked someone in front of the whole class. It was the early 80s, but that shit has been illegal for a while. He basically just played Demiko with all the students instead of actually teaching anything. But the loser of game would sometimes have to have their picture taken with a sign that said Demiko's bitch and that was hung up in the back of the class. He also harassed female students. Not a great guy. I had a teacher in high schools who taught multiple subjects. I had her for biology and theology class. She taught my entire freshman year and then sophomore year second quarter she was there on a Friday. And she was gone on Monday. She didn't have a license to teach. Lol. Although later that year our football coach health and pay teacher got fired for asking for a BL job from a senior, so that's probably crazier. During a teacher party, 2 teachers snuck off and FK'd in a classroom. Most classrooms don't have doors. They were found by other teachers. Luckily no students found them, but they were immediately fired. We had 3 pedophile teachers and only one of them actually got fired. 2 of them got shuffled around to other schools. And one of those 2 was eventually arrested in another, wealthier, county where they actually held people accountable. Also not the same 2, but 2 were band directors. This was years after I graduated, but a German language teacher at my high school was caught hooking up with a 15-year-old girl. I remember getting a Facebook message from a high school friend saying, "Holy shit. Did you hear about MR? Name, the German teacher?" He then sent me a link to an article and there was the guy's mugshot. Long blonde hair and all. My friend got fired for stuff she posted on her Facebook page. Some of the kids told her about a pervy teacher. The principal was a creeper. Said some parents crackers because of copious Confederate flag wearing to conferences. Stuff she definitely shouldn't have posted, but to be fair, it was on a private FB page. No names were used. School's name was not mentioned. Someone was a friend of a friend or something and saw her posts. Printed them out. Sent them to the superintendent. I learned something. Nothing is private. Watch what I post. I'm a teacher too. Close bracket. So the teacher was proud that her class was so good that she wanted to get them some candy. They deserve it, so they went to her car and there wasn't enough room, so she put them in the trunk. Haha. I've heard his or a similar story before. I just don't understand why you wouldn't leave some students behind or something. I mean, you're already breaking the rules leaving school grounds with students without permission. Why not leave them alone in the classroom too? Our teacher was pregnant for most of the school year. So we had a substitute in 4th grade who got fired by telling us that she would bring a gun to straighten us out since we were misbehaving. And the few of us who had told the principal. She then got fired, but came back to check on us once before the school year ended. A teacher with the same or similar last name taught at my middle school years later. But it couldn't have been her since she was taller. But she looked similar. 2 teachers were fired before the end of the school year. One my 10th grade year and the other my 11th. The 10th grade year teacher was my government teacher. And she was insane. Like a conspiracy nut doomsday prepper. She was always spouting off bizarre theories in class, and it turned out some of those theories, and later she herself, were related to known hate groups. My 11th grade year, it was my favorite English teacher from 9th and 10th grade. And she was fired because she, accurately, called the superintendent of our school system a dictator. And small town gossip got it back to him quickly. So, he proved it. It was bullshit. I was looking forward to having her for my senior year. In middle school I had a Spanish teacher give this 2 kids an A in her class. All the kids had to do was beat up this kid that used to be bad in her class, especially when he started calling her a pinch gorda, fucking fatus. I end up finding these questions too late. So this will probably be buried at the end. But, just before Christmas, 1993. Small town in Lower Michigan. I was a sophomore at the time. My chemistry teacher was in a beating after school. Being reprimanded about inappropriate conduct toward, not with, a female student. After he was dismissed from the meeting, he went home, got a gun, took it back to the school, and shot the people who were in the meeting with him. The school superintendent did not survive, but the principal and another administrator did. He's now serving a life sentence. Left the gas on in one of the labs and almost blew up the school. This was just the straw that broke the camel's back. She was hilariously incompetent the entire time she was employed. Then when confronted about the incident, claimed that everyone was just being racist and resented her for having a PhD. This was a magnet school and all of the teachers had at least a master's degree. And half had their doctorates. It took a few months. But the school lawyered up and basically threw the book at her after taking care of every single possible contingency. Her classes didn't learn a damn thing that semester though. Someone posted a picture of her boyfriend grabbing her boobs over her shirt on their private social media. She got fired from the school she taught at. He was a football coach at the same school. He did not get fired. Alright, so my football coach in middle school had a good life. Wife and a young daughter and coach of the shooting team, but yeah. Rumor has it he was f-king another teacher in the supply closet. Now he's divorced but principal of some other school. Also my homeroom teacher my first year of high school was using heroin and stuff like that and was caught in his car doing it, so now he's coaching baseball at a middle school. This was my junior high science teacher. He was basically fired for being a creep to female students. Turns out after this the school found porn on his computer and iPad that he left behind for whatever reason. Making out with a student during a tutoring session. Thing was the teacher and the student hated each other. He talked shit to her non-stop. And the teacher got him suspended so many times. Whole thing was insane. Oh, and our computer teacher ran blog where he would do in-depth analysis of each porno he watched. 10-20 a day. I'm talking extremely in-depth. Plot analysis. Character development. Believability. The works. A student found out by googling his name and going down the rabbit hole. He was fired from our school within a week. His wife divorced him within 2 months. His last post on his blog was that he was giving up his venture of porno analysis because, and I shit you not, the plot lines has started to bleed together, become stagnant and uninteresting to him. How much time do you have? A science teacher at my school got fired because he put a chemical on a student's arm and it burned the student. Another teacher got fired because he taught something with computers and his iPhone synced to all the Macs and his sext appeared on everyone's computer. The sexting was with another teacher in the building who was married. Obviously kids took pictures and mass texted it around the building. One of the best teachers I ever had was fired because he asked for a bribery in order to pass one student. I was really disappointed when it happened. He made me fall in love with physics. The Spanish teacher had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old. She even had a threesome with him and her roommate. She got busted by the kid's mom and got a year in prison and 4 on probation along with a lifetime on the registered sex offenders list. 10 years later at our high school reunion he was still getting high fives. Had a science teacher let go for being high while driving the bus to a UIL event. I was on the bus. Had an ag teacher fired for showing the old method of pig castration, which was using his teeth. I didn't witness it, as I wasn't in that group. Had a band instructor go to prison for placing cameras in the marching band changing rooms. There were 2 of them within a couple years of each other. Female 5th grade teacher turned the lights off, put mood music on and taught the kids how to slow dance with each other. Male 6th grade teacher caught soliciting an underage male prostitute off campus. It was an interesting elementary school. The principal was f-king 3 different teachers in a school portable. Someone walked in on them and he was fired. Prior to this, female teachers would mysteriously leave every year for no foreseeable reason. I had some of these teachers. They were great. It later came out they were f-king the principal also and were pushed out. A male coach had a fling with a 16-year-old female student and bought her clothing and purses and phones and all kinds of shit and bribed her with cash and they hung out at his house. And then one day he got her to ride in his own truck to a game and apparently groped her the whole time, so she eventually told her parents everything and they immediately called the police and he was arrested and fired the very next day. He also was a coach for a bigger high school's baseball team, Plano East Senior High, if you care to fact check it. Crazy stuff from my small town in Texas. A chemistry teacher at my school was also the wrestling coach. He had a really weird relationship with the captain of the team my sophomore year of high school. He would go to his house and do chores for him and shit. IDK if it went anywhere darker. That's all the school told people. But it got bad enough his parents went to the school about it. I worked at a middle school for a few years. A teacher got fired for being too familiar with the students. I later found out it was specifically because to joke to a student that she looked like Heavy D. My freshman English teacher was fired when I was a junior or senior because her copy of Romeo and Juliet ended up being a homemade SX tape that she inadvertently showed in class. The teacher left her YouTube name login when she was showing the class a video. The kids looked her up and found videos of her jerking of Twinkies inside condoms. My in-school detention teacher was fired for starring in gay porn. Some kid found out and spread it all over school until the news got a hold of it and made a huge deal of it all until he was forced to resign. A student found his Facebook profile and all the explicit furry groups he was a part of, and then shared it around the school. Needless to say, administration was not happy. Also, to be clear, his firing was not because he was in these groups, but because it was all public accessible to anyone, including students. Obviously, which was against policy. High school history teacher, late 30s, started dating an 11th grader. He was the jock type in uni, but a big history nerd. Wife found out. They divorced and he was suspended for a year and barred from teaching at that school again. Last I heard he teaches in the northern part of the city now. The teacher tied up a girl to her chair with scotch tape in front of the other students. And when it was time to leave for a 10-minute break, the teacher left her there. The reason? She was being too loud. Oh, and the girl's age? F-king 7 years old.